meetings.
We actually just super glued her to that seat.
Hope somebody brings you dinner.
Oh, and hopefully I don't have to use the facilities if I'm super glued.
That chair has wheels.
Oh. All right.
I was just listening a little while ago to your report, James, on the radio about the discussion about whether commissioner jobs are part-time or not. And like anyone who's ever been within 100 yards of a commissioner knows that it's like, part-time, yeah. No,
It's a lot more than that.
it's way more,
Yeah.
yeah. And we thank you for your.
I guess it depends on how good of a job you want to do.
Well, right.
Yeah, right, that's right. Yeah.
You can,
Oh, I don't want to go to that meeting. I got to mow the lawn.
yeah.
It's just interesting, all the preparation for whatever it is, like planning commission tonight. I mean,
We
And
are,
Board of
we are
Adjustment.
live, by the way, just so you know.
long documents. And then, looking at maps, driving to sites,
Yeah.
and every committee, every group has that type of thing.
Yeah, and for me, and it's a lot of research because, well, what was done in the past? Why is this coming up? Or what are the background stuff?
Well, I think for a lot of us that are new, it's just a lot.
Chris and Bill, we haven't heard anybody's not coming, have we?
No.
I spoke to Chris 2 days ago, and he said he was going to be here.
Okay. All right, well, we can wait, right?
I think we should.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
There.
There he is.
Hey,
Hi, Chris.
hello there. Good to see you.
Hi, Chris.
Hey.
Oh, glad you said that. Hi.
Hey.
Might have left
Good to
it in the
see you.
car.
Yeah, you too.
And just so you know that we're live.
Sure. Yeah.
Anything you say can and will be used against you.
Of course. Yeah,
You have to find all the volunteers and raise all the money and. We're waiting a few minutes to see if we expect Bill Gabler, our
sure. Okay,
5th board member.
sure.
Do you want a copy of the agenda?
Yes, please.
James has prepared those for us.
There's that.
Thank you.
And then the other big thing is that.
The job description that we'll be discussing.
And if you're trying to access any other agenda packet items, I'm happy to share my screen.
Okay, well, I've got it here. Thank you.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Well, how's retirement working out?
Retirement is delightful.
Are you sleeping late every day?
Not every day. I wake up early once in a while. And then say, why? Like, oh, it's still dark? Nah. But, I'm involved in a few things that are giving me something to think about and keeping me engaged and involved in the community, and I can't stop altogether. That just wouldn't work for me, So, but yeah, it's interesting. It was more of a transition than I expected. I thought it was, but it's great.
I think you're doing very well. I retired in 2009 and haven't gotten as far as you have, so perhaps you could share some life lessons.
Well,
I'm a slow learner, and
I was describing to someone one day the 4 boards that I serve on, and then I was like, and I think I chair all of them. Cool.
there you go.
I better look at this. But it's all good stuff, so.
So I did
That's
scan
good.
the parking lot, and I didn't see Bill anywhere, so maybe we should just go ahead and get
Should
started.
we go ahead? Okay. All right. Well, that being said, then, I will call this meeting to order, the December 15th meeting of the Cook County Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Welcome, everyone. We'll start with introductions. And Chris, you weren't here with us last time, so we all just spoke for briefly about
Yeah.
ourselves and what brought us to this
Yeah,
table.
I
so-
did watch that. I did watch the
Okay,
first meeting.
so do you want to start and
Sure,
talk
yeah.
a little bit about yourself?
So I'm Chris Skilden, and I'm a builder. I build custom homes and do general contracting. And I've completed a small handful of development projects for housing, including a 6-unit apartment building and a couple single-family homes. And I'm currently building this winter 2 more single-family homes on speculation. So, yeah.
It's great. Welcome. All right, Lawrence?
We introduced myself last time, so I'm Lawrence Doe.
Yeah.
Anything else you want?
I think just.
Okay, I'm
yeah.
Lawrence Doe.
And
And I'm Stacy Hawkins.
And Ann Sullivan, I'm the alternate county commissioner.
Chris O'Brien. Chris O'Brien.
James.
And James Yorkie, County Administrator.
And I am Mary Somnitz. Thank you, everyone, and again, welcome. The first thing on our agenda is the approval of the November meeting minutes, and I just have one thing I'd like to add to the minutes. As I read them, I observed that the first time we voted, the votes were 3 in favor and 0 against. And then a couple paragraphs later, it was 4 in favor and 0 against. And I would just want to point out, to add in the minutes at some point, that Lawrence arrived in the meeting, and that's why the number of votes changed there, just to
Yep.
provide additional clarification. And other than that, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I also move.
And a second.
I'll second it.
All right, Chris and Lawrence, any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, very good. That would be a vote of 4 and 0. Okay, the next thing and the important work that we're going to do today, very exciting, is review and approve the executive director job description, and then after that, we'll talk about the process and the timeline. We have received in our packet a draft of the position description, and James, do you want to talk about how this came to be?
Yeah, sure. I want to recognize the help that we got from Elizabeth Glidden at the Minnesota Housing Partnership. After our last meeting, we spoke with Elizabeth and said that we were seeking job descriptions that we could use as sort of a template for this one. And she very generously followed up and procured several different job descriptions. And so what I did is I kind of looked through what she provided and then put what I thought were the best elements of each into the county's job description template. And so that's what you have before you today. And I was trying to tailor this in a way that reflects the unique needs that we have here in Cook County. Obviously, there are common elements in any position like this, but I wanted to make sure that this one kind of reflected the specific things that we are needing the executive director to do moving forward. And those really focus on kind of the year one work plan, which is identifying the county's housing strategy, building relationships, of course, with stakeholder groups, and building relationships with potential developers and so on. Because this issue is not one that either this body or the executive director by themselves will be able to address. We're going to need a lot of partners working in a coordinated way to really make progress in this area. So that's really what I tried to focus on in the job description. I have no pride of ownership in this. If there are things you don't like about it, we can change it in whatever way we need to make it exactly what the board wants it to be.
One comment I had was that under the section, I thought generally it was quite good and didn't have a lot of changes. Under the desired attributes, one of the things that we don't include is a desired attribute that someone has experience in public housing programs or experience dealing with HUD or Minnesota Housing Finance Authority. So, I mean, that would, certainly if you had to choose between two candidates, one of whom had a lot of that experience, that would, that'd be favored.
Good point.
And there may be other housing-specific characteristics that we want to capture there.
I appreciate that, and I made a note of that, wondering, I was thinking about it in the place where it talks about minimum qualifications, if that kind of experience can't be equivalent to a degree. So maybe we can, if there's someone there who, like myself, I did not have a degree when I came to my most recent job, but I certainly had an equivalent experience.
Yep.
So I think that might enable someone to apply that might not otherwise.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we're not characterizing these as showstoppers, because there's certainly,
Right.
there are certainly candidates that don't have that experience that should be considered, but it's just
Right.
I think we ought to be.
I'm just a little confused. So you were saying that we should consider somebody that has an equivalent experience without a diploma? And I didn't understand your comment, Chris.
Mine was that we didn't list as a desired attribute.
Oh, I did hear that, yeah. I got
Yeah,
that. I made that note.
right.
Thank you.
Right. And that up above, it doesn't say that a degree is required, but that it's preferred.
Yeah.
Well, it says a master is preferred over a bachelor's, but anyway, just,
And maybe that's superfluous, I don't know. I put that in there because I think typically, executive director type positions frequently do require that.
Yep.
But in this instance, it may not be appropriate, so.
right. So, some combination of that, whether it's in lieu of education or a desired attribute, however it's best to.
Yeah, and in county job descriptions, we frequently do count equivalent experience as meeting the
Okay.
requirement, so.
Perfect.
Yep.
Madam Chair, I just wondered about, under education, if we could say minimum of a bachelor's degree with a preference in business administration, public administration, or et cetera. Just thinking that we don't want to preclude anybody who maybe has a degree, and here's where I was thinking similarly to you, has a degree, but it might not be in these areas, and then they might also have experience with MHFA
Right.
or other types of housing.
Yeah. Right. I made a couple of other notes. I'm going to go back to under essential functions near the beginning of the document where it says, number 1, the executive director will work directly with the Board of Commissioners. I'd like to put HRA Board of Commissioners there, just to make sure that we're not confusing anyone about the County Board of Commissioners.
Sure.
I myself am easily confused by those kinds of things, like, so, and I know what it wants to say, so.
Yep.
And then in number 11 of that same section, it says in the second line, well, it says that the executive director will communicate with officials and present agency objectives. And previously, we've spoken about this as the authority. So just to be consistent,
Sure.
just change that word there.
Okay.
I have a master's degree in proofreading, so. And then I have a question under the physical requirements. And then are these what the county uses, or?
Yes.
So the second bullet that says, a requirement of this position is to be able to hear and speak effectively. And I think that someone might be able to do this job without being able to hear.
Yeah, and actually, you know what, I take it back. So this is specific to another job description.
Okay,
I apologize for not catching that.
that's okay. It just seemed a little unnecessary. I know some
Yeah.
professionals who are able to do their work very well by reading lips and by using telephones that have captions and,
Yes,
so.
and actually, I mean, this is, not only is this from a different job description, but I also think it's from an older job description, because we have updated all the county, well, we are in the process of updating all county job descriptions to be, ADA compliant. So accommodations will be made for applicants who need them.
All
So
right.
apologize for that.
That's okay. So
error.
maybe, James, if you want to just review that section
Yeah.
and do this section the same way you're doing that work
Right.
with
For
other
sure.
things,
For sure.
to make sure that we are ADA compliant. That's absolutely wonderful.
Kind of important.
Yep. Okay. Lawrence, did you have any?
I do.
All right, good.
I found this to be, I found it really to be skewed heavily towards organizational and financial. And nothing in there about interacting with building contractors specifically. That if this is about developing housing, it seems to me like the bottom line is housing. It's not finance and it's not organizational, it's housing. And that should drive the organization and the financial aspects of it. And I see nothing in here about the housing aspect. It's all organizational and financial, institutional. That's one comment. Under the minimum qualifications, I wouldn't begin to consider somebody for this job who the experience was in business management. To me, they would have to have experience in community, what's the other one they had in their community? What was that one? Community, how did you say it in here?
Urban community planning.
Yes, public administration or urban and community planning. If they didn't have that kind of experience, somebody who's really involved in business management, business administration could run any kind of a company, really. This is very specific to housing and social and urban, and not even urban, rural development. That's the other thing in here, is that this is not an urban community, it's a rural community. Very different set of circumstances. So we need somebody who has experience in rural development.
Community plan.
The other thing is that if I came in to interview this and I saw this job description, my first question would be, how much support staff will I have? And what I heard last meeting was that there is none. And if that was the answer, I would head for the door. This is an unrealistic job description for a single person. I don't care how talented they are. It's way too complex. It's way too high of expectations. And I think that it's setting somebody up to fall short. So I would suggest that we really look at the budget and put money in there for a support person who would be hired at about the same time, and that these two people would take off at about the same time. Because this is a very complex job description. The amount of reporting that's in it, the amount of engagement with the different organizations. Even to speak of, there's no talk about engaging contractors in here. There's not a single line about dealing with contractors. So I think it's really incomplete, and it's too big.
Okay.
I interviewed for a job at Goodwill, or Courage Center years and years ago. And I was about the 10th person interviewing for this job. And I read through the job description, and I told the interviewer, who eventually became my supervisor, I said, you really expect your people to put out 110%? And she said, well, yeah. I said, because these percentages of job descriptions adds up to 110%. And she said, what? She went through the math, and she said, nobody caught that. Literally, they expected 110% of me. And I think this is way over more than 110%.
I think, Lawrence, my comment on that, I guess, is that I think that, I think we are on a growth ramp, and I think that a big part of whoever is hired, I think a big part of what we're looking for them to do is to engage, with us and kind of flesh out a plan for what the organization can and will do, and I think that's doable, with a single person or without having to have an assistant. I think that I don't see a lot of hard objectives in here to say you've got to have 6 meetings per week with contractors or what. I mean, I think it's implicit that the person will work full time and over the course of the first year work to put together a plan that will include what resources are necessary to bring that about. Whether that's something, and if that assistant is brought on, then we'll have a clear idea what that assistant's going to be doing. Because at this point, I guess the assistant would be helping to put together the plan, but that might be kind of cumbersome, as opposed to just hiring a smart person to do what you're mentioning. Talk to builders, talk to all the parties involved, and then distill that down into this is what the recommended plan would be. We review it. Does it make sense? Yeah. Is it going to cost more? Maybe. How do we, and to kind of take it from there. And then at that point, say, well, this is not enough. We don't have enough resources for one person to implement this plan. And some of the funding for that might come from grant funds that person identifies, or it might come from the levy or whatever. But I think that we should think about it in stages. And this is step one. Anyway, that's just my thought.
Well, I guess I'm a little confused because I thought there was a plan in place. We have an action plan for a year. We've got this there is a plan in place. So I read this as action activities, not planning activities. I read this as somebody who is supposed to engage these different organizations, not somebody who's supposed to plan how to engage these organizations. So maybe I just misread it.
Well, I guess I'm assuming that their job is to engage those agencies and figure out what we are going to end up doing in the long term. Are we going to focus on building new? Are we going to focus on building new housing? Are we going to focus on what's going to be the focus of the HRA?
Okay.
I mean, there's a bunch of things it could be, but what are we going to? What's the highest priority? What's the most practical? Where's the money going to come from? And to do that, you got to engage all those agencies and so forth, and come back but I don't. Anyway,
Okay.
and maybe that's a year, maybe it's 6 months. I don't.
Yeah, okay.
I think I kind of see it like you do, Chris. It's a startup, and from the experience that I had working at the EDA and working on housing issues, I think that to start out, I think one person can begin to do the good work of this organization. And, if we can prove that we'll be more successful in creating housing by having support staff for the executive director, then we can address that in our next budget request.
Sure.
But at this time, we're not able to increase our budget request for 2022 at this time.
Right, it has already been turned in.
That's been approved in the process previously by the county board, and
It will be approved Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
well, not right.
With any luck.
It hasn't been
luck.
final, right? It hasn't received final approval, but in the preliminary approval, right?
Correct, correct.
So, hey, hi, Bill, welcome.
Bill?
Welcome.
Sorry to be late.
We're happy that you're here.
So am I.
We are walking through the position description and having a good conversation about things that we'd like to adjust and add. And I want to go back, Lawrence, to your comment about specifically naming contractors. I think under the essential functions, in item number 2, where it says work with a variety of partners and stakeholders, somewhere in that sentence, we can work in the word specifically contractors, developers and contractors.
Okay.
Because
That's an appropriate
that is
place.
exactly what we want this person to do, not just to talk to us.
Right.
To talk, so let's add in number 2,
And I don't know how you are as a contractor, but contractors, they're a little hard to talk to sometimes.
Chris is easy to speak with.
Is he pretty easy?
When we answer the phone, we're fine.
No.
If we answer the phone,
okay? And did you have more?
No, not on
comment?
this.
Okay.
I'm good, thanks.
Chris, do you have anything?
I don't right now.
Not right now? Okay. Bill, are you ready to catch up to where we're at?
I am.
Have you had a chance to look this over, and do you have any comments, questions?
I don't really. I thought it was fairly complete, and more complete than I actually expected.
Okay.
So somebody's been doing some legwork, hopefully the housing partnership among others.
Yes, James did tell us he did receive support from the Minnesota Housing Partnership in providing some draft language that led to this document, so we're very grateful for that support. All right. So, do we want to say, with the amendments and additions or adjustments that we've just discussed, if we've captured them all, that, would someone move to approve this position description, and then just to be super comfortable, then ask James after it's updated to email it to us, to put eyes on it one more time and make sure that we all heard the same thing and that it's all been captured?
Yep, I think that'd be great.
Does that sound like a good next step? Okay.
What was the proposed posting date?
And then, well, so the timeline and the process, I think, are the next,
Okay.
Looks
so
like
on the
two
20th.
separate.
Okay, yep,
so if we want to just.
got it. No, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Would you like to make that motion, Chris?
I will move to approve the position description as, with the amendments that have been discussed, and should be included in the minutes. Yeah.
All right, and Chris and Chris. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Very good. That is a vote of 5-0, and the minutes will reflect that we've added Bill Gabler
All
since
right.
the last vote.
Boy, you're keeping
I'm
me
glad
on my
it's not
toes
Lawrence
there,
again.
Mary.
Thanks, Bill.
That's just a reflection, Bill, of the fact that the last meeting, the first vote was 3-0, and the next vote was 4-0, and so
So
we're making sure that
now at a
people
full 5-0?
understand. Yep, here we are, we're all here together for the first time at our second meeting, that's great. This is wonderful. Okay, our next agenda item is the process and the timeline, and
And so in putting this together, I just, I started with, I think even though this puts us, the ED's first day in the beginning of April, I'm all about any suggestions for speeding up the timeline, because I think the sooner we can get this person in place, the better. But I also recognize that getting the right person is probably something that's going to require a little bit of time, and I didn't want this board to feel too rushed. But having said that, If there's any discomfort with the length of time that is represented in this timeline, we can certainly talk about compressing it. So this would have us posting the job announcement as early as next week. And I thought it would be really good to get that out on the street before the holidays. And that would give us into January to accept applications. I don't think it would be advisable to make the application deadline any earlier than the 21st of January, because we want to make sure that this is adequately promoted, that all the people who might want to consider this position have the opportunity to see this and respond to the announcement. So assuming the application deadline were January 21st, by the 28th, we would acknowledge receipt of applications and would have an initial review of applications and how that process goes. Obviously, any review by quorum of this board would have to be a publicly noticed meeting. And so, and typically the way it works in county hiring is the board approves hiring decisions, but it doesn't actually participate in a deliberation or in the interview process. And so I'm not sure, this is a different kind of situation because obviously this employee is going to report directly to this board.
So James, back up just, is that for is that for privacy of the potential candidates? Why, what, did I keep it away from it being an open meeting?
Well, so, I mean, anything this board does has to be in the open. But our process needs to provide for some level of privacy for applicants who maybe are currently employed and don't want their employer to know that they're looking for another position. And so, I mean, I think the first part of the process, the full board does not need to be involved in this, but at some point, and maybe the way we do this is we have a couple of you involved at the front end, kind of calling out, winnowing down the applications we get to a set of first round candidates that we do some preliminary interviews with, and then when we have a list of finalists, that's when, and I think that's actually the way that we did, like the recruitment for the extension educator position, the community center director position. When we have a set of finalists, then it becomes public information. And we would just have to advise our finalists that this is how the process is going to go. And that would enable the full board to kind of review and discuss the finalists and have those interviews.
And would this all be made clear to the applicants in the application process? I mean, I think it needs to be just out there that you're subjecting yourself eventually, if you're a finalist particularly, to some public attention.
Yes, we could clarify that in the job announcement, and that's pretty typical of these kinds of positions, that information's included.
But is the interview, so, okay, I'm getting way ahead of myself, I think. So if a couple of us participate in the first vetting of the applications, and then there's interviews.
First round interviews, which, two board members could participate in.
Two is not a quorum.
Right.
Then for the final interviews, I think I heard you say then the whole board would do that, but then is that like this kind of a meeting that those interviews are live streamed and posted on YouTube in an interview?
Yeah, using my hiring as an example. So the first part of it was video interviews that they used to do screening. Then they selected a set of first round candidates or second round candidates. And from there, they selected a group of finalists. And those interviews were public.
They were, okay.
Yeah, and
I
they, in
didn't- I
fact, you
didn't
can
catch
watch
that.
them on the county's YouTube page.
Okay.
So I'm not recommending that you do that, I'm just saying. And so I
Okay.
think that would probably be a good model for this
All right.
process
Yes,
here.
yeah, that
All
makes
right,
sense.
I am willing to follow precedent, I just hadn't,
Yeah,
I wasn't aware.
I had no idea. Yeah.
And I watched it live when it was streaming, and I appreciated being a public member, being able to
Able to
hear
do-
what the commissioners were.
Okay.
Good, okay.
So maybe looking at this, the schedule that you've provided to us in our packet, so the review and update the job description, who's going to do that? That's us. We did that today, right? That's the board. Then, now let's talk about when and where it will be posted.
Right. So one of the key, well, a couple of thoughts about that. So there are a number of channels that we could use. The Association of Minnesota Counties has a job posting web page that we could use. We should also post it through NARO, because I think for folks who work in this field, that's going to be a key place that they're going to look.
NARO is the National Housing Authority, what?
National Association of Housing and Redevelopment.
I spelled it wrong.
And we
Uh,
anticipate
organizations, I think.
Applicants to be from outside our community, outside our county.
Yes,
Both,
both.
in it,
Yeah.
within and without.
Within and without,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Does Minnesota Housing Partnership have additional channels beyond Nauru, or is it going to be there?
I guess the other possibility would be, there's one of the main public sector job websites is governmentjobs.com. And that's, that and probably like the ICMA, which is the International City and County Managers Association. They have a lot of sort of ED type positions for publicly oriented agencies like this. So those would be some additional places that we could also advertise through.
And then locally, would we print up notice in the local newspaper and put it on Boreal or include it in the, would you include it in the ads that the county's running for jobs that are open, or are we separate of that?
I think I would suggest that we do. That we
Include it?
as a, I mean, not that it is a county position, it's unique, it would report to this board.
Right.
But again, because you are kind of a creature of the Board of County Commissioners, I would think it would be appropriate to put it on the county's website.
Would we do a press release also?
We could, sure.
You can do that. And I can help you with some of this stuff, you know, I'm,
Please. You can do it all if you want.
nice.
See what I did there?
Let me think about that.
Yeah,
We'll work together, and we'll sort that out.
sounds good.
I'm more than happy. Okay,
These
so.
are the better ones, I can tell, for this position. I'm assuming that Minnesota Housing Partnership is probably able to do some recruiting, or, you know, their arms stretch around the state quite a bit, and I'm assuming they might be a potential, maybe recruiting's the wrong word, but to at least get the word out through their own channels, as well as NARO and the county, Minnesota counties and that kind of thing.
We can check with Elizabeth and see
Well,
what they might be.
we don't have to, because she's checking with us. I just got an email from Elizabeth, and she was also recommending the League of Cities,
Oh, yeah.
Minnesota Council of Nonprofits, Minnesota NARO, and then locally through the EDA and the Chamber.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yes, thank you. She's on the ball.
And I was going to add the Iron Range Economic Alliance.
Yeah.
Is all of the EDA types in the Northeast region in the IRRB service area, and I've been a member of that group forever, and that's another great network to.
I wonder if there's, Mary, more specifically, I wonder if it's worth a call to the HRAs that we're included in the housing partnership presentation last time. Virginia, has a long-standing HRA, and there may be some alums from those
The
organizations.
peers, yeah, we could send it to those. And NARO, I think, are we thinking the Minnesota chapter of NARO or
That's what Elizabeth
That's
mentioned. yeah.
broader, the
Mhm.
broader NARO?
We could look into doing either.
Either way,
or.
whatever they tell us is probably, they'll know, they'll guide us probably, NARO will. Other HRAs, yeah, that's great. We'll do that. Virginia and, was it
Was it Itasca?
Itasca County?
Itasca.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So, today's the 15th, so the 20th, that like next week, Monday or something?
It is.
Then we'll work on getting this polished up
Mhm.
by then, and then get it ready to release to these places. Then, complete the interview questions. Are we gonna maybe be lucky enough to get some guidance from Elizabeth and Minnesota Housing Partnership on questions that have been used by other HRAs? Or does the county have some templates that we can copy and paste, or?
Well, knowing that she's watching, I'm more hesitant to volunteer her assistance. But, I bet
Should
she
we all
probably would be willing to help us with that,
Okay.
so.
So should we say, that's a couple weeks out, so maybe between, James, if you can, and you and I can work together with Elizabeth or whoever,
Mhm.
and then send out a draft to the board?
Yep, sounds good.
And then, okay. All right. And then we have an application deadline, and will those people send their applications to you? Or who? Who will hold them?
They could be sent to me.
To you?
That would be fine.
Is that okay?
Mhm.
Okay.
I have to back up just a second. This is, what is it, about 4 to 5 weeks? Is that enough time for people to get applications in? I don't know what the time frame is, these different organizations that you're mentioning, they're gonna post them. I don't know if that takes a couple of days or a couple of weeks to get it posted.
They can post electronically.
Yeah, they'll post right
So
away.
it
Oh, that's
happens
quick.
just
Yeah.
really right away.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It'll all be
All
electronic.
right, so that's plenty of time then, the posting itself won't take much
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
Okay,
Correct.
all right, thank you.
All right. And then, within the week, this might be a place where we can, if the deadline is the 21st, we might be able to acknowledge them sooner than the 28th. And if you want me to help you with that, as the chair of the
Mhm.
board, I can do that.
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. And then, the initial review of the applications. So, 2 members of this board, and who else?
And it wouldn't have to be, I think it'd be really good to have probably Beth Drost from the EDA,
Okay,
and possibly an EDA board member, since their work intersects with housing pretty significantly. I think it'd be good to have them represented in this process as well.
okay. And,
There might be other important community partners, like maybe Jim Boyd at the Chamber. I'm just throwing out ideas here.
Are we going to keep the number, this is to develop a round 1
Correct.
set of interviews?
the initial,
And
right.
So I guess,
Yeah.
we can figure this out later, depending on how many applications we receive, but
Mhm.
what's the number we're aiming for? We're trying to get 5 people in the first pool,
Mhm.
and so the job of this group is to pick the top 5,
Mhm.
or what, or anybody's qualified.
Yeah, maybe when we read them, they will tell us how many
That's
there
what I
are
think,
going
yeah,
to be.
yeah, it's probably hard-
Right,
probably hard.
applications themselves
Yeah,
will
we'll
drive that number perhaps.
We'll
Is there
figure-
going to be like a scoring system there was like for these 5 positions here? Is that how it'll be done?
Yes.
All right, and so the elements, how are the elements upon which they are scored, how is that developed? Those headings?
That's, I haven't had time to think that far ahead, but
Okay.
I think that's something that I would welcome input on.
Yeah, maybe that's in parallel with complete the interview questions, is
Mhm.
complete the
Scoring
the
matrix.
scoring
Yeah.
matrix. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the scoring, I would think, would be a combination, based on my past experience, would be a combination of their application, their response to the things that we're telling them we need.
Right.
Yeah.
And the response to the questions at the interview.
Except that they're not, the initial screening, that's not going to be an interview process, is it? Or is it? The initial, where it
Well, the
says.
first screening will
Initial
just be-
review of
right.
applications.
That'll just be the applications,
Yeah,
you're right.
No, we can probably just take the job take the job description that we reviewed earlier and said, does it meet the minimum, have the
Yeah.
criteria and the desired attributes and.
All right.
Right.
I think looking at that job description, though, we probably need to winnow down the characteristics that are in there for, if you're gonna do a ranking or
Yep.
an assessment like that, because it's a fairly complete job description, but it needs, I think for this purpose, just get boiled down a bit, and,
In some of the scorings, the way that it's written, some of those, from my read, some of those things in the job description are more subjective than objective. And it's a little
Right.
harder to score subjective aspects.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll have to,
Oh, I am sorry. I'll turn that off. I'm
we'll
sorry.
have to figure out what are the objective things that can be scored.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so what I'm hearing is, and I totally agree, I think Beth and an EDA board member, and which two of you, which two of us? Anybody? I'm happy to,
I'd raise my hand on that, and I think I've got a pretty good feel for HRAs and their
okay,
needs and that kind of thing, so if I could be of service in that way, I would.
all right.
Mary, if you're looking for a volunteer to draft that scoring matrix, I could take a whack at that and then circulate the draft for comments to everybody else.
Okay. Thank you. And Bill, you were volunteering to be in the reviewing of the
Yeah,
first
the initial screening. of the-
screening, and I guess I'd be happy to do that too, based on my experience of the last 5 years, understanding pretty well what I think we're looking for, if that's okay, if anybody else wants to, we can draw straws, or,
No, I think with the two of you guys are doing
that
great.
good? Okay.
And there's no reason you couldn't all review. I mean, you should all look at the first
Yeah.
group of resumes if you want to. But just when it comes down to actually doing the interviews, that's where we'd need to limit it to.
But we couldn't do that as a group, sitting at all five of us. We could come in
You do it
individually or in couples.
independently.
Right.
Well,
Yeah,
and-
independently
I would
readable.
email them to you, and you could review them,
Oh.
and you could send you could say, here are my top 5 picks, and I could compile that information,
Yeah.
and then,
I like that.
You could, right,
Right.
each board member could send their top 5 to you,
mhm.
and then you could compile it in an aggregate sort of way, anonymously,
Right.
giving us a summary of
Yeah,
how that shook out.
okay.
And then Bill and I can see how, if that leads us forward, or if we
I
need
like
to
that.
discuss it
Yeah, yep.
further. Yeah, I want everyone to be involved, but we have to be careful how we do it because of the
Right.
public
Yep, right.
meeting, and we can't, like we said, we can't have all of these conversations
Yep.
for the privacy of the people who might be currently employed somewhere else.
Yeah,
Okay,
So that means that we'd have to, if the application deadline is the 21st, I don't know if you want to send out all of them as they come in or all as a group, but that means that we'd have to read them over and jump on it pretty darn quick. And we really have to be active
The following-
right then,
that
jump
following-
right on it and get back to you
that
with our
following
top
week,
5.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, and a lot will depend on whether we get 100 applications or 5. So-
well, I can tell you for the EDA replacing my position, they received 13 applications. So that's a good number.
It's a good
That's a
benchmark, yeah.
very satisfactory number, and, if we're anywhere in that ballpark, I think that's,
James, how many were there for your position?
I wouldn't know the answer to that. I think the first cut, there were like 11. It was double digits, low double digits.
Uh-huh,
And then there were 4 finalists.
okay.
So,
So there's not big numbers, not huge numbers.
right.
Okay.
I think, it's,
Okay.
it is, not everybody wants to live in Cook County. And
Good.
that's why we're okay with that. So then, from there going forward, the timeline, this is maybe a good estimate, but let's agree that once we know the number and we see how things are starting to line up in terms of interviews on calendars, then we can accelerate this faster as we go, if we're able. Wouldn't we love it if it didn't take until the beginning of April? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we
Yeah.
could accomplish this in March sometime?
Is that, I mean, I don't have experience with this, but is that sort of 3 or 4 weeks pretty typical for a background check?
Well, it would, I'm just thinking between the time that we provide an offer letter and the time.
Oh, I see, give them a month, okay. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, yep.
Because,
That makes sense.
they're going to have to give notice if they're currently working, and
Yep.
then arranging to, if they're from out of the area, trying to get here. I think a month
Right,
is not too
trying to
much.
find housing.
One of the
could be,
thoughts-
yeah.
One of the thoughts I had as I looked at that was, wouldn't we, unless it's your protocol, wouldn't we do the background check before we sent the offer letter?
Yes.
It seems like that might eliminate some embarrassment and some issues that,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
will delay the actual hiring only
Yep.
further.
Right, oh, good point.
Flip those, yeah.
There you go, being all logical, Bill.
Well, that's kind of rare for me, but
That's
You
a
could
great
really do
suggestion.
that February 17th, right after your first round of interviews,
Mhm.
The
and
background
do it
check.
for your finalists.
Yeah.
And-
So that
and
you're
who-
ready to
Who
roll.
does that, out of curiosity? Is there a service that the county has, or do you just get online and Google search that?
As somebody who has never done that in this organization, in my last job, I did that. And we had a service that we used, but I'm not sure what our process is here.
Okay.
So-
Yeah, that's true. I think doing that before the finalist interviews
Yeah. Yeah.
makes sense. All right, and then, once we get to the point where we make someone an offer, then that person will tell us how quickly they may or may be able to start. And wouldn't it be fabulous if it could be 2 weeks instead of 4 weeks, or, excellent.
So will reference checks be done by the 2 people that are doing that first round?
Oh, yep, we
I had a
don't have
question
reference
about
checks
that.
on here. We should do that. Bill, yeah?
Good point.
So we need to make sure that we include in the position description that they should provide references.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we have to go back and. Okay.
So if we do offer the job to somebody from out of town, won't it be slightly embarrassing if we don't even have housing for that person?
Well, you're building spec houses, aren't you?
Okay.
Get one of them done quick, will ya?
There we go. Dibs, you got dibs on it, so.
There was a very strategic reason that you were selected for this.
No.
You can start a challenge to all the contractors in the county to build the house for the HRA director. And we'll figure out a scoring system to see which house that person is gonna move into.
Nice.
It is true. That is a very true thing. We've discussed that since we started having this conversation more than a year ago, how crazy that would be if that happens. And it's possible. It happens too much. But, you know, we just have to follow our path and see what happens and
Sure.
hope that it isn't the case. Or that, you know, we're able to find some kind of a landing place, you know, even for someone to be. You know, it's coming up on spring. You know, maybe there'll be, I don't know, we just have to hope for the best but yeah, truth. Definitely truth.
Have we thought about a compensation and in this application process? I mean, how many people apply for a job and don't know what you might get paid?
Oh, in the work plan, we have, do you remember, the total is 125,000.
75 is the salary.
It runs in my mind that wasn't it like 75 to 80 or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, 75 to 85, I think, was the range that, I know it's in there somewhere.
It's in our packet from last month.
Yeah.
I can't, but I do, that feels like my memory as well.
Yeah.
And then some of the other dollars are for the, you know, the labor burden on top of that, or the benefits package, or whatever else comes with it. And then some amount was for if we need to purchase a laptop, or if we, you know, whatever office startup kind
Cost or
of,
something like that, yeah.
you know, other costs of starting up.
The salary range was, at least in the work plan, was 75 to 85,000, fringe benefits 30 to 34, and IT and office supplies of 6. And I think that was,
Okay.
it all looks reasonable.
So if it's a range, then is that negotiable by the applicant or by whoever gets the offer?
Or salary commensurate with experience kind of a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's always a negotiation.
Yeah. And do we publish that in the position
Yes.
description?
It will be in the,
This budget will be in there? Okay.
typically for public sector job announcements, the pay range is included.
Is included? I'm fine with it. It, like, cut to the chase, you know, if you're not interested in this, then
Right.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any wiggle room in terms of the housing, for like a housing allowance? I mean, is it just a matter of what can be found and at what dollar amount?
Well, the budget is the budget. I mean,
That's it, okay.
the county board allocated $125,000 for fiscal year '22 for this effort. So that's
I have to say, when I saw it in the paper before this whole application process, I thought it was not a very huge commitment on the county's part. I thought that it was pretty marginal commitment. at
You might talk
120.
to the person sitting on your right.
I'm probably the skeptical one, but I'm,
I should talk to this one? You and I got to talk after.
Okay, yeah.
It's too late now, but
They're
I
the
just
ones
thought-
that have to actually make these decisions, and
Actually,
it's not easy.
no, it
Well,
isn't.
it reminded me of a cooler, a cartoon that they had at the coffee pot when I worked at Goodwill, and, Courage Center. And it was an executive director and an underling talking across the desk, and the executive director says, well, the good news is we got enough money to design the program. The bad news is we don't have any money to implement it. You've probably seen those exact cartoons, yeah. And 125,000, but anyway,
This is,
that's a done deal now.
It's a
this
start.
is more than we
Yeah.
originally started talking about.
Yes.
Yep.
When we agreed that it needed to be this, at this level, to attract a person with the right background and skills to begin to be successful as soon as possible, to then enable the community and the elected officials to continue to support this effort and this position, and add a support staff and increase the, you know, to keep the ball rolling. But to start, this is huge. This is
there is
huge.
also money in the EDA budget levy of $100,000 for housing.
For
So-
projects.
But that's
Yes.
projects.
So there's more money available to access.
Yeah,
Um,
right. Those dollars have been in the EDA budget for, and this might be like the fourth year coming up, 22. It's the third or fourth time that it was in the EDA budget, and it's specifically for projects. So if a developer comes and says they need some financial assistance and they need an indication of local support to leverage other grant dollars, that is the purpose of those dollars, the intended purpose. And of course, intentions can change, purposes can change, but that would be a process that we would want to make sure that everybody was on board. We can't start
Right,
just.
and dollars that have existed are allocated right now, so it would be something for the future.
It would be the 21 money just got allocated
Right,
yesterday.
yesterday,
So there,
right.
for 22, for calendar year 2022, there is another 100,000
Right.
coming. But again, for that same purpose.
Which I wondered if we should have taken it from there and given it to the HRA, but we didn't have an HRA yet.
Right,
So-
we had that, yes,
So
we had that
that's
conversation.
why it's in two different budgets right
Yeah.
now.
We
And
had-
so
yeah.
my hope is that someday we have a HRA that can prove that it's working well and we fund it correctly.
Yeah, and I also believe it's on the record, I know it is at the EDA, that the $100,000 in the EDA budget for calendar year 2022 will be accessible for the HRA, working in conjunction with the EDA. Once, if we get this going, you know, because at the time that the EDA budget was submitted, the HRA was still only an idea. There'd been no approval anywhere. And so we knew that it was like the cart before the horse kind of a thing. So, but there always has been intention that the EDA, if and when the HRA was created, the EDA would work with the HRA with that $100,000 and not have independent housing initiatives going on in both places, that they would come together.
Merge.
Right.
So, it's, that is the understanding of everybody that I know of, so I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Chair, that raises an issue that I don't know if you called for additions to the agenda when you started the meeting, because I wasn't here, which is on me, but it really is getting into a subject that I'd like to talk about whenever we're done with this agenda, and that's really the relations with the with Minnesota Housing Partnership and the EDA with their memorandum of understanding. How much of that is, you know, is available to us, or how does that work? And then secondly, the professional services that every HRA I've acquainted with has and needs is a lawyer and a financial advisor. And the county has both of those. The question there is, are they available at least to start with the HRA? And whose budget pays that? They shouldn't be big expenditures right off the bat, but I'm just thinking, this is a different agency and a different commission than the county board. And so if push comes to shove, you don't want, you know, the same lawyer representing both. I think initially, you know, to get some advice is okay, but one story I remember from, it explained an awful lot of behavior, is that if two lawyers agree, they're like theater critics. If two agree, there's no need for one of them. But that's exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and that's why, you know, typically you'd have your own lawyer and your own financial advisor, although financial advisor is really less of a conflict, I think, than legal. So I just want to raise those, and they don't have to be answered right now, but my mind is thinking about them. And
Yeah.
All right, I've made a note. Before we move to those, and
Yeah.
also we want to talk about NARO membership.
Mhm.
I also have a thing when we get to it on the memorandum of understanding, I have a comment on that, the new thing that was added, so I would like a little bit of time for that, please.
Okay. All right, so first, have we concluded our discussion on the process and timeline? Does everyone feel that they understand and we have clear what our expectations are? And now it's down to hopes and dreams, but, okay, very good. Not really hopes and dreams. It's good work. We'll continue and get done, and we'll get it out there, and wow, this is an exciting time for Cook County.
Dreams, so that they will come. Okay.
Yeah. All right, then. Maybe the next item on the agenda is the 22 meeting schedule?
Yeah, and
Let's do that
I
quick.
intended to include this in the agenda packet and realized after the fact I forgot. So I can email that out to you. But basically, the proposal would be to continue having meetings on the third Wednesday of each month from 3 o'clock to 4:30, since that seems to work for all the board members. And those meetings would occur here in the Commissioners' Room of the County Courthouse. And so I'm just going to read the dates for the record. The third Wednesdays of each month in 2022 would be Wednesday, January 19th, February 16th, March 16th, April 20th, May 18th, June 15th, July 20th, August 17th, September 21st, October 19th, November 16th, and December 21st. And I will email that to the commissioners, so.
And are you okay with Wednesdays at 3 o'clock?
Yeah, I'll make it work.
You can make that work
Yeah.
with your?
See, I mean, it seems kind of like the middle of the day to me, but
I know, that's why I'm wondering, like, would you prefer that we should start later? Would other people be okay? Or can you just try this for a while and see if it's,
this will work for them.
this is good? Okay. I don't want anyone who's building houses to ever put down their hammer, you know?
That's what has to happen to make it to this meeting, though.
I know, right, that's why, but so you just tell us if it becomes problematic.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
just let us know, and I think the rest of us are maybe more flexible. I don't know, Lawrence, what you're,
I'm pretty flexible, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can be.
so, all right, I just want
No, for
to,
now, this works.
okay.
One thing, I had a question. I think I had mentioned in January, I'm going to be out of the country. Hopefully, it's okay to attend via Zoom, or is that doable?
So using our county board meetings as a model, our technology, the legislative information management system that we have, does not play well with Zoom. So we can live stream meetings from this room, but we don't have the capability to have hybrid meetings, which incorporate
Sure.
both in-person participation and virtual participation. And but one thing, if you can't do, we could conference you in on the conference phone,
Sure.
which is not exactly,
And I could watch live.
you could,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
So there'd probably be a lag. It might be a little disorienting to do it that way, but
And you could do both, right? You could be watching it,
Yeah,
and we could have you on the phone, so you
Right.
could speak to us as
Sure.
well,
perfect.
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. So maybe just remind James to set that up
Mhm.
Will do.
before the January
Yep.
meeting
No
then?
problem.
Yeah, okay. All right, so that's the 2022 meeting schedule. Then, before we started, James mentioned to me that he had checked into for this group, and I'm very grateful. Chris had inquired, Chris O'Brien. It was on my mind, I hadn't said it out loud yet, but the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Organizations, NARO, membership for us. And James, if you want to give that update?
Yes, so I did speak with Chris yesterday about getting this HRA signed up to be members of the National Housing and Redevelopment National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Organizations. And so I reached out to NARO. The membership fee for an entity our size would be $230, which is fairly nominal. They've got a lot of great resources, and one of those resources is a commissioner's handbook, which at the member price would be $27 a copy. So I did talk to Auditor Treasurer Brady Powers and asked if we could get this ball rolling before the new year so that you could have that resource available as soon as possible. He said that would not be a problem. So tomorrow I will get us signed up to be NARO members, and I will order those handbooks for you.
That's excellent.
Excellent, thank you.
And thank you, Auditor Powers.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And
I
just
think that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
to be precise, the O in NARO is for officials.
Oh, okay.
Official.
Okay.
Oh. All right. First, I have to put the letters in the right order.
That's right.
All right, that's great. And since our last meeting, we did have Elizabeth Glidden did reintroduce us. James, I think you were on that as well, with the Minnesota chapter of NARO. So once we have this membership going, then we can reach out to them. And I think that their executive director would be happy to, join us in a training if we have specific needs, or bring us some information about best practices, or what's our next best first thing that we should be doing besides hiring someone, what else?
And they have I noted that they have a conference in May, which might also be an opportunity to get up the learning curve quickly. So.
Excellent.
It's usually at a resort around Brainerd.
Okay.
And now they may have expanded since my day to Giants Ridge or places like that, but
Okay.
they're worth it, I'll say that.
Great. All right. So then, let's talk about the Minnesota Housing Partnership, the memorandum of agreement with the EDA. How do we fit into that? And Lawrence, do you want to bring your question first?
Yeah, well, the first thing is, I am really new to this. You all are really experienced, and you're throwing around a lot of acronyms that I have to look up. I went on my cell phone to look up MHP, and I come up with Minnesota, or mental health professionals. Well, I knew that wasn't it. So I'm wondering, is there any such thing as a flow chart as to how it is that this HRA fits in with the county and with the EDA and with the folks at Lansing? I don't have any idea how that stuff is related. And I know that this body has some legal and financial responsibilities, and I kind of like to know how that works, who I can talk to and who I can't, so to speak. And I really apologize for my ignorance, because I'm sitting here with you folks that are really experienced with this, and I really understand that I'm a neophyte with this. So is there any way that I could get some kind of a flow chart, some visual thing about how all these groups are interrelated?
I'm in the same newbie position, and so what I found helpful was to start with the Housing Partnership website. And then that included a number of resources, it's an iterative process. You have to look at the acronyms a few times, but that was pretty helpful.
Okay.
I also, based on the presentation from last time, I went to the website for the Virginia Housing Redevelopment Authority, and just to get a better sense of, they've been in place since 1949. And so they have a long experience, and they manage public housing, they manage rental subsidies, it gave me a much better sense about what a grown-up HRA can do.
Okay.
And anyway, that was just a couple of starts that because I'm in the same position. I'm trying to get up the curve.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. Thank you. And then this memorandum of understanding. Is that like a working relationship with the, is that what that means? That's sort of like the parameters with which we agree to work with each other?
Well, that memorandum of understanding or agreement, I think it's actually called that we've been talking about, is between the Minnesota Housing Partnership and the EDA. And it is relative to a grant. So when I was at the EDA, I applied to the Minnesota Housing Partnership for a grant for technical assistance. And the memorandum describes the technical assistance that is available.
Okay.
And how that work will occur. And that memorandum is in the minutes from our last meeting. So are the written minutes of what happened in our meeting, and then the presentation that we received from the Minnesota
Yeah.
Housing Partnership?
Yeah.
And then after that is actually a copy of that memorandum.
Okay, I'll have to, because there was
Scroll.
a,
Pages 18 and
Yeah,
19.
I've got the copy right now.
18 and 19.
It's the
Here it
first-
So
it's the
what we got
first couple
for
pages.
today was, what we got for today was something new added, which is what I wanted to talk to about. I'll review this. I'll go back.
Yep, so so what happened was, there was a memorandum of understanding between the EDA and the Minnesota Housing Partnership started in 2020 and expired in November of 2021. And this new language is because there's another grant and the technical assistance is going to continue. So this is new language added to the
And that's what I
old-
have an issue with, is the new language.
Oh,
I have a big time issue with that.
okay.
Because if we're working with the partnership with the tribe, I think it's really problematic for us to get training from the state and from other folks without talking to the tribe first. And I've been in contact, I've been trying to get in contact, I've made several phone calls and emails and stuff, and we're going to set up a meeting. But I think it's really important, given some of the past history between the community and the tribe, that we don't bring in outsiders other than the tribe to initiate cross-cultural training. I think that's really a problem. And if you look at what Bobby Deschamps is involved in, he's involved in a lot of stuff around housing that I think I don't know who knows what he's involved in, but he's involved in a lot of stuff. And I'm not about to go up there and say, this is what we learned from the state, without knowing what he knows and what they're doing already. I think we should draw on local resources first, before we draw on state level resources. So, and I'm not opposed to this. I think cross-training is really important. But I think that we could do it in tandem, but not the thing from the state first. I think that'd be a real problem. If we want to partner in any way, shape, or form with the band, we've already got some roadblocks in the way for that, and this would be another one.
Yeah, I think you're right, Lawrence, and I don't think this is a meaning to say that we would do it upside down. I think that this might have been added. I have to be careful because I don't know for sure, but Beth Drost at the EDA is a member of the Grand Portage tribe band, and she may have added this language or requested that it be added. So this is their agreement. This is between the EDA and the Minnesota Housing Partnership again.
How does that impact us?
So we can go to the EDA and say, hey, we want some of that technical assistance. So all this is saying is that it's supporting training. It's not saying that we're going to initiate anything with anybody.
No, I understand
So-
that. What I'm saying, though, as this body,
Yeah.
what, we're talking about what we're going to do first. We talked about, this whole thing about how we're hiring, first this, then that, then that. And what I'm suggesting is that this body needs to have contact and some kind of relationship with the band before we have a relationship through the EDA or through whoever it's from with people in Lansing. And
I don't know what's in Lansing.
isn't that where this training is coming from?
No, this is the Minnesota Housing Partnership. Their
Aren't they
office is in
Lansing?
Minneapolis.
I'm sorry, Lansing. I'm back in Michigan. I'm sorry. Lansing is Michigan. I'm a Michigander. I just gave myself up. I'm sorry. I'm not from around here. I'm a Michigander. I'm back in Lansing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, let's clear that up. Okay.
All right. So
yeah, okay.
we
your point-
should just work locally as much as we can.
Yeah,
That's my point.
all right. And then this is yours?
One more question on the MOU, just for clarification, but for things like the partnerships, the Minnesota Housing Partnerships, support of our meeting last time with the briefing and Elizabeth's participation in this meeting and so forth, is that support being paid for out of the MOU with EDA, or is that something that how is that, who pays for their help
I think
with
that's
HR?
part of that. It's provided to us
Okay, good.
via that,
Through the MOU, great.
right? That's my.
That's correct.
So we don't have.
The Minnesota Housing Partnership has been assisting us since the beginning of this, like it started the technical assistance, and it was for the EDA and the county and the city of Grand Marais, so.
Got it, okay.
It
That's-
flows through the EDA, the agreement is signed between them and the EDA, but it's really for all of us,
Okay.
the county. All right, and then Bill, you had brought this up as well?
Yeah, just an understanding of how that works. Do we ask the EDA that, or say we need some assistance here, for example, on things that are in the MOU? I'm assuming we would ask them, is this okay with you, since it's their MOU, and proceed that way, or not? But that's one question, is just how that works.
Yep.
And
So-
and then that actually, listening to Larry's comments, it raised another issue that I thought of at the first meeting. What relationship do we have, or will we have, or could we have with the Tribal Housing Authority? They have one of their own, and with Grand Marais, which is there legally but inactive, as I understand it. And we're supposed to, there was some discussion, I think, as the HRA was being created, that we would somehow assume the responsibilities for Grand Marais as part of this HRA, because theirs was inactive. But I've kind of done a brain dump on what I know, but they raise issues of, gee whiz, what are our next steps with some of these things,
Yeah.
and who does them? That maybe it's, maybe this executive director is going to have a lot to do, and maybe we can do some of that ourselves, or maybe others know what the answers are.
So I heard a couple of questions. One, in response to how do we work with the EDA and Minnesota Housing Partnership under that agreement?
Right. That's,
I believe Beth Drost is watching us right now, and
Good.
so she's hearing this question. And she and I talked earlier today. She wasn't able to be here today, but she does intend to join us and to be available for conversation in our meeting. So perhaps we could put that as an agenda item for our next meeting.
that'd be great.
About that, how that, what are the mechanics of that relationship? And then, the question about the HRA, the authority for the city. As I recall,
And
Mike Roth told us during the planning process that the city council would simply pass a resolution to grant their housing authority to this body. And so then that gives us the ability to treat things within the city the same as the rest of the county. So we'll make a note of that and ask them to put that on their agenda so that we clear up whatever that needs to be.
Are there any skeletons that come with that transfer?
No.
Okay.
Nope, not that I'm aware of, and I probably would have found them by now.
And Mary, I've got one item when we have a chance.
Okay. And then let's also, I don't know that we know the answer about legal counsel and financial advisor, but let's carry that on for a future understanding as well. Okay. And then, okay, Chris O'Brien, you have one more thing?
And this is, I think, in parallel with the interview process, and this is back to getting up the learning curve. I mean, I think that there's a kind of a database that would be really helpful to have as a starting point, so we all have the same knowledge, and maybe some of this is pretty easily accessible, but if I were just for planning purposes, it'd be helpful to me to know how many rental units are there in Cook County today? How many are qualified for rental assistance? How many renters are there versus non-renters? How many building contractors are there? How many, just to kind of get some of the facts. I looked in the U.S. Census to see if you could drill down into that kind of data, and I didn't find anything. Others may have some ideas on how to gather that, but it seems to me that there'd be, for the new person coming into the job, that would be a really helpful thing to have to hear say, this is exactly what you're dealing with. This is what the distribution of income is in the county. Some of that was in the housing partnership stuff, but anyway, I started doing some looking and didn't find stuff easily available, but maybe it does. It seems like the type of information that I don't want to reinvent the wheel if that kind of
Right.
if there's already a report that summarizes that kind of information.
Well, some of it is in the workforce housing study that was done for Cook County in 2015.
Okay.
It's
Great.
on the EDA website.
Okay.
I can pull it up and get the link and send it to you, James, and you can forward it to everyone so it's easy to find. I think it's under programs and projects on that website, prosperitynorth.com, but I will also
Okay.
do that. And then I know that there has been discussion at the EDA because there are some current housing projects that are applying for some grant funds that are asking for some of that data, and that housing study is more than 5 years old.
Yep.
So the EDA has been having some conversations, right?
And we did
about-
not last night have any update on that, but it is something that there's an intention to do in the near future.
In the near future. And an interesting thing for you to remember, in that discussion, that housing study was strictly workforce housing.
Correct.
It doesn't address senior housing, it doesn't address other kinds of, so a more comprehensive look at housing might be what we need, more than just updating that work that was done in 2015.
Does the assessor's office keep track any of that kind of data?
I don't know. That's
I think there is some information through the assessor's office, and land services has information about like short-term rentals and that kind of thing, but I don't know how readily available that is.
In
I
terms
think
of
that-
retrieval aspect or agency talking to agency?
Retrieving it.
Uh-huh,
Yeah.
okay.
Might be, it's an interesting thought that we would gather all that and have it ready for the executive director, or it could be one of the first things that we
Executive
ask the executive director to do.
Yep.
That's going to take some work.
That's
and,
a lot, that's a deep dive into a lot of, yeah.
you know,
So
Okay.
let's think about where we,
Well, why don't, I guess we'll individually kind of get up our respective learning curves but that 2015 study sounds like that would be a helpful thing to
Yes.
start with.
yeah, it is. That's where, the language that I memorized and have quoted from that study is, the study showed that Cook County needed to build 25 single-family houses per year for 5 years. It's 125 single-family, and 65 to 75 rental units. So it identified the need for 200 units of housing for workforce. So, but there's like this much, many pages of other data that I didn't memorize, so we'll get that link out.
Good.
For sure. All right. Anything else for us today? Anybody? Ann? Stacy? Lawrence?
I just would like to thank folks for putting up with my inexperience with these kinds of meetings. So I want to thank you for that. You're all being very patient with me.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you for being here. Chris? Chris?
I'm good.
Bill?
I would just add a kind of a piece of the last discussion. One of the thoughts I had as I thought about, gee, what's the HRA going to do? And I had a conversation, grew out of a conversation with James about the existing subsidized and assisted affordable housing in Cook County. And preserve, and job one is kind of preserving that. You know, job two is getting more of it, that's clear. But I know, I'm not saying this is about to run rampant in Cook County, but there are places where assisted housing that have got federal subsidies or other forms of assistance are being converted to market rate units, and tenants are being displaced, and it's really, there've been a couple of really ugly situations, and so the first idea was, let's find out what subsidized housing is here, what assistance is already flowing into Cook County, and there are 4 of those developments. 2 of them are together, and 2 of them are up on County Road 7 going out of town. 2 of them are seniors, 2 of them are for families, and but there's just enough concern to keep an eye on that, and 2 of them I know are were financed through Farmers Home Farmers Home Administration, USDA, and the others I assume are financed through the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency. I've got to touch base with them just to confirm that, but that's just an information item. I'll keep working on that because I am concerned about that issue, because I've seen it in the Twin Cities. I mean, it's a different market and all of that, but it's really pathetic when you're going backwards instead of increasing the supply of housing that's affordable.
Well,
So
do you have a link to those particular properties?
I do. I have got, just a snapshot of each one of them, and I can
If you
send
forward
that to
it
James
yeah,
and
yeah.
send it out.
Part of the learning process, that would be helpful.
Very good. And James, do you have any final?
No, just other than to say thank you to all of you for your service in this work. It's desperately needed, and I'm really excited that we're taxing down the runway.
We are. Excellent.
So we're looking for a pilot while we're taxiing?
Well, we have an excellent co-pilot.
That's true.
I want to thank you for your support, because you put a lot of work
Yeah.
into the preparation
Thanks,
for both of our meetings that we've had so far. And soon, we'll get you some help.
I'll be ready to hand it off.
Yeah. No doubt.
I'll bet.
All right, well then, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? No one is opposed to adjournment. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate the
Good to see you here.
perspective that you bring to this board. It is so helpful.
Exciting time.
That's why we need new people to come and